Hi, I'm Reg Grant. Welcome to our lesson on marked texts. When you're trying to figure out how to designate those key words that are going to mark the beginning and the peak of a build in your text, we're going to follow one very simple rule. The beginning word is going to be colored green. It may be a conjunction, may be a preposition, but it will always mark the beginning of the build. And for the very first green word, it will always be the first word of your text. Always. The very first one is going to be green, and it will eventually make its way to the IC, the intensity chart, in the lecture to come. So for now, all you have to keep in mind is that the beginning word is going to be green, and that's going to be called a valley word because it's green, and green is my valley, and it's going to build to a peak word, which we are going to color blue. Now that green and that blue are going to translate eventually onto the intensity chart. You may have 3, 4, maybe 5 key peak words and valley words corresponding across the breadth of your narrative or the poem that you are performing. The key is you want to be able to understand what the pace is going to be by looking at the difference between the length of time, the number of verses that you take between the valley word and the peak word. Valley green, peak blue. And eventually we will translate those onto the intensity chart. You'll begin by opening your Microsoft Word document that you have copied and pasted from the Net Bible, Luke 2:22-35. Again, Net Bible is our version. You're going to notice right off the bat that there is a red line right here. You'll remember from a previous lecture that that is called a body position mark. There's another one down here, second body position mark here. The primary goal of this lecture is to stress the need for words of emphasis. The first word that will always receive a green color is this first word in the text. In this case, it's the word now. The second word that we would want to emphasize would be this word, the word Lord, and then so on throughout the text as indicated. See here how I have created my first valley word. The very first word, I put it in green because green is my valley, and then the first peak word is down here. It's at the end of the very first verse. The word Lord, I've put it in blue because blue is the color of sky, and that's a peak word. Then we scroll down and see now, again, is a valley word, followed by Christ is a peak word, followed by so is a valley word, followed by God is a peak word, now, valley, glory, peak, so, valley, amazed, peak. Well is the last word of the reading, and so that's your final valley word. Okay, before we move on to discuss these body position marks, I want to make another couple of comments about emphasis marks. If you want to emphasize other words, for example, you want to emphasize Jerusalem, that's fine. Do it in bold, or in the case of righteousness, do it in bold and underlined, or the word devout is another important word. But for the most part, you want to keep your text uncluttered, and you want to reserve the colors blue and green for peak and valley words. The rules for emphasis are pretty general. You want to emphasize whenever a new character comes in. For example, Moses is one that you might want to emphasize with an underline or a bold. Place names like Jerusalem are other instances where you might want to consider bolding it or underscoring it in order to give it particular emphasis. But again, keep your text as uncluttered as possible and reserve the blue and green colors for peak and valley words, since those are going to correspond to the intensity chart that we're going to create. You'll remember from our previous discussion that this indicates a body position mark, and that could be either full front or full back. The chances of it being full back are remote to nil. It's almost always going to be a full front body position mark. This one down here is also a body position mark, and it indicates a 1/4 out right body position. And you'll notice that the body positions are placed right at the place where you want to be sure to be in that body position when you read that part of the text. The last thing that I want to say with regard to marked text has to do with the layout of the text. Here you can see that the text is laid out according to the development of the thought. Now, if you have the ability to do a mechanical or grammatical layout of the text, then that's fine. You can do that. More importantly, you want to lay out the text according to thought development, so you complete one idea before moving on to the next idea. For example, in the beginning we have, "Now, when the time came for their purification according to the law of Moses, Joseph and Mary brought Jesus to Jerusalem." Okay, that's the completion of one thought. Now, why did they do that? In order to present him to the Lord, just as it is written in the law of the Lord, and so on, so that the text is presented in cascading fashion and your eye gets used to the development of the logic of the text in that way. So, to review, valley words green, peak words blue, the distance between with accompanying body position marks will help you discern the pace for your performance.